Hello and welcome to the Bikes or Death podcast. I'm your host, Patrick. And on this episode, we are going to follow up to the last episode that I did with Roger Gilles, and we discussed his book, Women on the Move. If you haven't listened to that episode already, I suggest that you might want to pause, go back and listen to it. One, it's really good. I think it shares a part of our history, specifically women's racing 120 years ago, that most of us, myself included, were not aware of. After I recorded that episode, I got to thinking that it would be neat to reach out to a current women's racer and kind of get some perspective on what her thoughts were on the book or the podcast and what women's racing looks like now, some of the stuff that's good, some of the stuff that's bad. And I reached out to a few people, and Jolene Holland was recommended to me. I already follow her on Instagram and know a little bit about her, and I met her at Spirit World 100 this year when I was in Patagonia there. Yeah, I reached out to her and she was more than willing to chat, and I just want to thank her for tackling this topic. I don't want her to feel like she's speaking for all women. That's a conversation with many, many levels, and it's certainly unfair to put the weight of all womanhood on her shoulders, but it was good to just chat with her, open up a dialogue about her perspectives in women's racing and her experiences therein. As always, I really enjoyed talking to her. She's a very inspirational person who's diligently and intentionally making conscious efforts to improve women's cycling, women's racing, and we had a great conversation. I hope you enjoy it. But before we get to the show, I just want to remind you that this show is 100% listener supported. I couldn't do it without you. I mean that. I'm pumping out way more episodes than I ever thought possible or ever thought that I would. And that's simply a factor of all the support that I get from y'all and specifically the financial contributions. They are very helpful. You can head over to bikesfordeath.com, and I've made it easy for you to find ways to support the show. I would like to highlight Patreon is a great way to be a sustaining member of the show. For as little as $1 a month, you can sign up to be a sustaining member of the show. I send you some swag, and I'm looking at ways right now to improve the benefit to patrons. I've got an idea that I've been kicking around for a few months, and well, I guess I could just tease it real quick. What I'm planning to do is a separate segment of the show called Shifting Gears, and it would be talking about just a topic. So I would bring in a guest. I have several on my mind, but I would bring in a guest and we would maybe tackle like bicycle safety or being an adventurer and being a family man, things in that vein. And so the format would probably be about 30 minutes. It'd be a shorter format, and we would just tackle that one topic. And as a patron, what you'd be able to do is submit a guest that you'd like to hear on or a topic that you would like to have discussed, questions about the topic and whatnot. So that's kind of the direction that I'm headed and currently what I got brewing and I'm working on. So if that does sound awesome and something that you think would be cool, just reach out and let me know. Feedback is always appreciated. So if you think you'd be into that and that would be worth $1 a month, just shoot me a DM on Instagram, or you can get my contact information at www.bikesfordeath. All right, that's it. I had a great time in Austin sitting down with Jolene Holland, and I hope you enjoy this conversation as well. So let's get to it.
You load up your bike, you ride away from home. You could be with your friends or you could be alone. You ride for a day or maybe more. You just love being in the great outdoors. Everything you need is strapped to your bars, including that new pillow you got from Santa Claus. And then you think, oh shit, to yourself. You left that super lightweight tent on the living room shelf. Bikes or death. Bikes or death. Podcast.
Here I am at McKinney Falls State Park, joined by Jolene Holland.
Correct.
All right. I know who I'm talking to. That's great. Real quick, why don't you give us the elevator pitch on your background in cycling, just to kind of introduce anybody who doesn't know you to, what are your credentials as a cyclist? I haven't asked that question before,
I like
but you
this.
have credentials.
Yeah.
You also have crutches.
I guess.
We'll do credentials first and then crutches.
It's kind of crazy. Time tends to go by faster and faster with every year, as they say, and it does. And all of a sudden, I have been riding my bike for a little over 10 years now, and that's crazy. So I guess when you think of credentials, I'm like, damn, I have been riding my bike for a bit.
I've been doing this a while, yeah.
I came to the old bicycle when I was living in Chicago. As a fresh 19-year-old out of high school, got myself to college, and found myself waiting on the L platforms for the train in like 2-degree weather with 25 mile per hour wind just hitting you in the face. And I was like, there's got to be a better way to get around.
You're like, I can ride my bike in 25-mile-an-hour wind.
And the funny thing is, I had never really ridden a bike. I learned how to ride a bike at one point, but I had never ridden a bike to get from point A to point B. And for some reason on that L platform in the winter, being cold, I was like, I think I could ride a bike and stay warmer.
Really? It just hit. Well, I guess it makes sense because you're like, well, walking, I'm not going to get hot enough.
Right. Yeah. And then.
And so you're like, if I ride, I'm going to be like building up body heat.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. The body heat. And then also, I have to say, I'm like perpetually 5 to 10 minutes late. And so sticking on a bus or a train schedule was a little difficult. And I was like, I think I can ride a bike. And that was like prime fixie era as well. I didn't know anything about the bike world at all, but like there were the cute fixie kids in Chicago, and I did take note of that.
Sure.
I, thought I was paying a massive amount of money to buy like a $150 bicycle, as you do when you are starting to look at bikes for the first time. And so I started riding, and I also was taking a class in school called Power, Politics, and Race in Chicago. And it made me kind of reflect on societal issues and how the urban form relate and, have responded to each other. And how then also cars have impacted the urban form and society. And, I'm like thinking about all of this as I'm like riding my bike from point A to point B for the first time. And so it was kind of a collision of worlds for me, because I obviously got really excited about riding my bike, but I also got really interested in urban planning and transportation planning. And that's what I ended up going to grad school for.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So decided I wasn't going to stay in Chicago because I was actually studying theater at the time, which is hilarious. I didn't know what I was doing, but I did realize that
None of us know what we're doing until we figure shit out. Like all anyone's ever doing is like, okay, do I like that? Am I a theater person? Am I a cyclist? Am I an engineer? Like, what am I? So, yeah.
Yeah. And
so you're not a theater person?
No, turns out. Although I did love it. And I absolutely think being in Chicago was like a catalyst for where I am today.
Sure.
Even though I'm in massive debt for going to a private college, for 2 years for theater.
That's okay. Pro cycling will pay for that.
Oh, exactly. Ugh,
I'm foreshadowing.
Yep. But I ended up moving back to where I'm from, Omaha, Nebraska. And luckily at the time, there was a new local bike shop that was kind of focused around cool commuter type stuff. This was 2010. And I basically walked in and was like, I don't know anything about bikes, but I need a job. and kind of started going on their like social rides and stuff, and eventually, and the manager was actually a woman, which was really cool, and she was like, hey, we need a salesperson. Want to work part-time as you're finishing your undergrad? I'm like, I do. And
Awesome.
that was the big fall into the black hole that is the cycling world.
Yes.
And
how long did it take? Were
what
you
part?
a quick convert to the black hole, or did
Yeah, totally. I have always been competitive, and I've always loved sports. I never was like really good at it, or I just did sports throughout high school, but was like an average athlete, I would say. And so I liked the physical challenge that riding gave me.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask, is what part of it appealed to you? Like, what aspect of cycling where you're like,
oh man, I think so much. Like that's
really?
and I think I'm still excited about like all of the aspects that are cycling.
That's the right answer.
Yeah.
Good answer, yes.
But at first it was just getting out of a car. I really hated driving ever since I was young, and stuff. And so it was actually interesting moving back to Omaha. I had never owned a car. I just used like parents' cars and stuff. And then I moved to Chicago. You obviously don't need a car. Yeah. So I was coming back to Omaha, and I'm like, well, I am broke. There's no way I'm buying a car. And I had never considered riding a bike before in Omaha. I didn't even know that was a thing. I had actually my favorite teacher in high school did commute on a bike, and that was like, he was like the crazy hippie guy that rode a bike.
I know
so that was my
guy
only
in
exposure.
my hometown.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That was my only exposure.
I'm trying to remember his name. Van Brunt. Bob Van Brunt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody knows. Everybody knows him.
Shout out to Bob.
Yeah.
He owns hot dogs, etc. We'll give him some business there.
Awesome. Oh, yeah. So I did come back to Omaha, and I was like, well,
so then
I
you
guess I'm
became
gonna
the
commute.
crazy
I did. I
lady on a
became
bike.
the crazy girl riding her bike, and like all my classmates knew me as that, which is kind of funny. And so I was commuting, and that's why I kind of like got interested in those like social group rides at that bike shop, and I was like, this is really cool. I would love to, work there part-time. And then I actually ended up meeting my partner now at that bike shop.
Who is
he
that?
was working, Jonathan.
I just know
JK
his
Neve
Instagram.
At JK Neve.
Yeah.
So that's where we met, and we were like good friends for like 2-3 years before ever dating. Again, all the collision of worlds, right?
Right, yeah.
And it's the bike is a funny thread, I think, throughout all of it. So I got, of course, I just got sucked into cycling. Like I wanted to know about all of it, and I wanted to ride all of it. Like it was just this huge world that I don't even think I really knew about the Tour de France. Like that's like the one thing normal people know about bikes, right? And I'm like, I guess I kind of knew because of Lance. And it's like that was my exposure to biking.
Right.
And definitely nothing about racing.
That's probably most of the world is like,
Absolutely.
they know Lance Armstrong, and they kind of know that there's like a race.
In particular, Americans. Like it's just not a popular
definitely
sport.
Americans.
Yeah. So I didn't know that people spent like so much time and money in cycling.
Until they came in one day to the shop and paid $10,000 for a tri bike, and you're like, what is going on?
Exactly.
My car doesn't cost that much.
But my friend at the time, like ended up helping me basically get a road bike because there was a club team out at the shop, and I'm like, dang, you guys like ride all the time. And I'm like, I want in. And got a road bike and started to get some fitness, and I just loved it. And I was like, I have to race. And particularly it was like I saw these people doing this weird race that requires you're on a road bike, but it's got like some fatter tires, and you're like jumping over shit, and you're going through sand, and it's muddy, and it's cold, and you do it in the snow, and it looks so hard. And I was like,
you wear costumes.
I want to do that. Yeah, the costumes. You get donuts. People drink whiskey.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh,
So
I
you're
think
having a
cyclocross
party.
sounds really fun, and I
Yeah.
want to be a part of that.
Okay.
And that's how I ended up getting into racing, was through cyclocross. Cobbled together.
How far into it? So that was back in 2010 when you first started working there.
Yeah, so I started working in 2010. I took and so was working at the bike shop for about 6 months, was on a commuter bike, moved to Copenhagen for 6 months to do some more kind of urban planning, sustainable transportation studies, which was really cool. Another way of seeing how, people ride bikes and how bikes have influenced culture and culture has influenced bikes.
Yeah.
Very cool. So then I came back in 2011, and that spring I got a road bike, and that fall, first season of cyclocross.
And
It's
so
amazing.
jump ahead.
Mm-hmm.
That was obviously like a really good introduction to your experience in cycling. So where are you at like right now in your, would you call it a career? I don't even, do you have a regular job or all
I do.
Okay. So I don't know, but
Yeah.
In cycling though, like where are you at? What level are you at cycling?
So
And what type of events maybe are you doing?
Yeah. Let's see. On paper, I am a Cat 1 road and cyclocross racer, which is cool.
Yeah.
I have raced some UCI races, and I was on a professional road team, Colavita, for the past 2 years.
Colavita. Road team?
Yes, correct.
So what kind of, I have to admit I'm like a little bit ignorant
Totally.
with road racing. I'm the guy who tunes into Tour de France and the Amgen Tour maybe. It's like, all right, so I don't know a whole lot. What kind of, like, you go to a race, where are you going? Like, tell me what it's like.
Yeah.
What is it like to be a
question.
road racer
It
for Colavita?
It is not glamorous, let me tell you.
All right.
But I found it to be just so much fun.
Yeah.
And I think that's my personality, is I'm just a fun seeker and a lover of experience. And that was an amazing experience. The team, was as supported as a team could be, which means there's not a ton of money going around. I had equipment and travel and races covered. So that's the extent of and that's amazing.
Food?
Absolutely. Sometimes food.
Sometimes.
So
But that's
a
pretty
race.
sweet to go from I do this a lot and I love it to now I'm doing it a lot and they're taking me there. I have a place to stay. I'm riding my bike. Is that kind of...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so the past 2 seasons I've had 15 to 18 races on the calendar across the country.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I was a Criterium Racing specific team, which is if for people that don't know, it's a specific kind of road racing. It's an American style road racing that is by far the most fun thing to spectate, because it's on a small closed course, usually in a downtown, with 5 to 8 turns sometimes. Everybody's staying really close together, shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow, going 28 miles per hour for an hour.
Yeah.
So it's super fun. It's pretty electric.
Dangerous.
It's dangerous.
I'm scared to do a crit, for real. You're on, what size tire are you on?
I am very happy to say that I talked my team into riding on 28s.
Okay. So
because I'm all about that bigger, wider, crit cornering speed machine, and I think that is a 28 tire, where most of the peloton's probably on 25s
for the speed. But
supposedly.
Yeah.
But
if you can hold your speed through a corner, is that what you think?
Hold totally.
It through a
So
corner, have a little more confidence?
my philosophy is I do way lower pressure, and a wider tire than common. I would say what is common.
Are you giving away all your secrets right now?
No, I'm telling everybody to do it.
Okay. Colavita's going to call and be like, we need you to edit
and
that.
I think it, yeah, totally. No, I got them all in 28s.
That's great.
I think it is kind of an interesting thing, though, as maybe a lot of women going through cycling and like racing and stuff, is you have to challenge some of these like common things or like the rules. Like there's the rules.
Yeah.
I'm quoting. You can't see
Air
me, but I'm
quotes.
air quoting. And one of them is that, you know, you need a skinny tire and you need to pump it up to 110 PSI,
Yeah.
which doesn't make sense for somebody that is probably 60 pounds lighter than that person that says that's the rules.
So are you?
I'm all about that low pressure wire
Yeah.
tire, even as a
So
crit
it's like
racer.
a metric that was set up by men,
I think
basically,
so.
for men's
Yeah.
racing, and
Yeah,
you're
and at
just
one
like,
time
oh,
it
this
did
is
work.
the standard.
Yeah,
Wait,
and
whoa. No, I'm 60 pounds lighter. It can't be
Yeah.
the standard.
Yeah,
Is that kind of?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's a good
and kind of the
s-
gatekeepers of the rules tend to be older white guys, you know.
Ooh, that's a great segue into the book,
Ooh, there we go.
because even
Yeah, it
like
is, actually.
going back into Women on the Move, which is a topic that we were going to hit on, law. What would we? It was Law. That was the name of the organization that regulated cycling, and it was set up by men and run by men exclusively. So there's still a little bit of that, or a lot of that gatekeeper going on.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, we have made like tremendous inroads, I would say. Like you have to, this is kind of the funny thing, is like you have to acknowledge where we've come, like
Yeah.
how far we've come.
Okay.
But at the same time, you have to acknowledge like we have still such a long way to go when
Yeah.
it comes to cycling being inclusive.
Yeah. Well, good. That
And the leaders of cycling, you know, being inclusive and looking inclusive.
Yeah. Well, good. We're going to table that for just a minute,
Cool.
because that is kind of where we want to get to. But first, I want to hear about the crutches. Before we get into
Yes.
all of the fun meat and potatoes, I wanted to hear credentials and crutches.
I love it. So crutches, unfortunately, have been around for almost 6 weeks. And so I told you that, you know, I've been riding pretty actively for 10 years.
Yeah.
Have been racing for a lot of that. Have been crit racing for 2 to 3 years, which, you know, some would say is pretty dangerous. You know, ridden my mountain bike over stuff that I probably never should. And have never injured myself very, very badly. But turns out I can actually sprain my ankle very, very badly getting off of my bicycle.
Oh. Were you trying to be fancy? Like, were you do a leg over or anything? Or
You know, no, it was a dismount. The kind of funny thing is so like I love a good legend. I love good lore. And where it happened was at a party that a local cycling group put together, wonderfully named, called Troublemakers,
Yes.
par for the course.
Yes.
They set up a pretty rad backyard
I wanted to be
course.
there. That looked like a good,
Race
a good
course.
time.
with a pretty ridiculous ramp going over fire. So there's lots of photos of like people
Yeah.
jumping the fire and
Right.
stuff, and like people know, like a lot of people know that I roughed up my ankle at that party, and so
Okay.
I'm like, yeah, it was me going over that fire.
For sure.
Without saying it, I think that's in people's minds. But I had actually finished. I was like finishing my race, and I had my mountain bike, and I had mountain bike shoes on. And normally when I'm dismounting, kind of like that, I'm on a cross bike in different shoes, and not at a party with a fire pit, you know.
Yeah.
And it's not dark. And I just was getting off of my mountain bike finishing, and it was like a little bit of speed maybe, but I think it also was like the shoes, and I just rolled my ankle like so bad.
Oh, so like your left or your whatever foot, you put the foot
Yeah,
you were
and the
putting
funny thing,
down to get some
it wasn't
purchase,
even like
it
my
just
right
rolled.
foot. It was actually my left foot. So it was the second foot that I put down.
And your like brace goes all the way up your thigh.
Yeah, they booted me. I really didn't want it.
What happened? I mean, what was the injury?
Yeah, so it is technically just a really bad sprain. One of the, like, God, I don't know, the ligaments did tear a bit. It's the one that kind of runs up your calf muscle down past your ankle bone. And when I rolled it, it strained it over the ankle bone, and that's how it tears, which is pretty disgusting.
Yeah.
And horrible. But yeah, it's a really bad sprain, and can't walk on it, almost 6 weeks in, and I have another checkup next week, which I think I think surgery might be on the table.
Oh, no.
I'm really crossing my fingers against that, but also I do want to heal up in the best way possible and not think 9 months down the line, dang, I wish I could have got surgery. But so we'll see.
You're hoping for the best.
Yeah, it's been a season of stillness.
So you have no idea at this point, when you'll be back on the bike. And when is this appointment? The next?
You got a bug on you. Going in. There he goes. I think he's hanging out in your beard now.
Yeah. There's a nice nest of
there. Oh, there he goes.
His family's in
now
there.
He's on the microphone. It's wonderful. He can hang there.
That one was hanging out earlier. He's been around. He's
Awesome.
been around. Yeah.
Cool. So no, I have no idea when I'm getting on the bike next. I have no idea when I'm walking next.
Wow.
Turns out the funny thing about foot injuries is when you're on crutches, you actually lose your hands too. And so I have no carrying capacity, which drives me crazy. I can't get a glass of water very easily.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, that's weird to go from a super active, cyclocross. You're doing a lot of stuff to can't do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would never think about that. You got to do everything with crutches.
Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's my left foot, and so I can drive, which is
Good.
great. So I can at least get myself around.
Have you
to
ever
places.
been on a long trip and you switch over to your left foot to drive? Your right foot gets tired and you're like, I'll try it with my left foot. Have you ever done that?
No, I don't think I have. I definitely
just stepped on your
it's okay.
foot. Oh my gosh, I just injured her more.
It's okay. No, I don't think I have. I've definitely put my left foot up before.
It's awkward.
And I actually drove to Durango, the week after this. I had planned to go there over Christmas and planned basically to ski for 2 weeks. And it turns out I just went to Durango and sat around.
Well, you were destined to mess up your ankle, whether it was skiing or whatever.
Totally,
so
yeah.
It was
just
just
got
the
me
universe
in,
being like, hey, let's just get this.
Totally. And actually, it's kind of funny. It does feel like absolutely universal, slow the fuck down. And I am acknowledging that, and I'm sitting in that. And I think so many folks, like me that are super active, really struggle with stillness. And it's just been kind of good. I honestly think I've just wanted to be lazy for so long. I was about to tell you how it's a kind of a mind, body, spiritual thing, but honestly I think it's just I wanted to be lazy and not do anything and sleep in on Saturday and Sunday mornings.
I'll be honest. Every once in a while you get a cold, right? And you're just like, oh, this is so nice.
You're I don't have to do anything.
Forced to watch Netflix for 3 days straight,
Totally.
So
I totally believe in rest, and I have been somebody that has been running around a chicken with its head cut off.
Well, it's not like you're a lazy ass,
No.
You kind of probably deserve just to, and it's good. It really, it's good to be still.
It is.
I actually made a post about, and it's harder to do than most people think. And there's a lot of value because we're inundated all the time with things we need to do or influences from wherever. It's good to just be still and be like, what am I doing? Am I happy? Who am I? What do I like? Who do I want to be around? All those things, So
yeah.
I know you're being a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but at the same time, there's a lot of value to be gained from that.
There absolutely is, because, it's like you do have to think about who am I if I am not a cyclist?
Yeah, your culture, your tribe, your
everything is so wrapped in that.
Yeah.
And so it feels good to be like, oh, I'm me. And it's okay that
And
I'm
you
not
like
riding
me.
a bicycle.
Yeah.
And there are, and I am kind of moving to a point in my life when I really do want to kind of diversify the things that I'm doing. Obviously I want cycling to stay in it, but like I would love to get into water sports, or like I would love to backcountry ski, and all of these things take a lot of time and mental energy and physical energy, obviously, too. So
yeah, this podcast is over.
Sorry, bye. Oh, did I tell you I was going to be a triathlete?
Oh, a triathlete. Oh, tell me about it.
Such a departure. No, just kidding. Absolutely not.
Oh, I'm giving
By
you
water
shit.
sports, I meant like kayaking.
I can dig it. I've been actually. I've read "Goodbye to a River" by John Graves.
Oh my God! Yeah, I actually bought that for somebody for Christmas.
So I read it 3 times in the last year. Like it's just so good.
It's about the Colorado, isn't it?
Brazos River.
Oh, the Brazos. Yeah, it's even closer.
Yeah, that runs right. It's actually the county that I live in is Brazos
Does a river
County.
run through it?
A river does run through it. Indeed, it does. All right. Well, so to give a little background to this conversation, I just did an episode with Roger Gilles, who is the author of Women on the Move, which is a fascinating story. If you haven't listened to that episode, maybe push pause and go check it out. If not, it basically talks about a period in our history from 1895 to about 1902. And so it's only like 6 or 7 years in our history, but it's talking specifically about women's racing in America in that period of time and how popular it was. Like, I had no clue, and I'm interested to get your perspective, but I had no idea that women's racing was one of the, if not the most popular arena sport in America at 1900, with, tens of thousands of fans, bands, I mean, the whole 9 yards. I mean, it was in the press. These were superstars in America, and it was a pivotal time in America because at that time, they didn't even know if women were capable of
being athletic.
And, and in fact, they thought that it would be detrimental to their health. They thought that women were
the old bike face.
The old bike face.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the images that they would draw of them? Yeah.
This is that's actually the only thing that I had really known of before listening to that podcast.
You knew that they depicted them as being like
of
gnarled.
Bike face.
Yes, yeah. It's funny. You can look this up, but they have like they would put it in the picture. It would be like a picture of Dottie, and then right next to it would be a caricature. Is that the right way to say it? A cartoon drawing, and just this gnarled
post
face.
Race. That's the best part. It's like post race face.
But the crazy thing is, even the participants, even the women who were doing it, they thought that they were going to die. Like they thought that they would have a shorter life because they were athletic. Like it was just nobody knew that women could actually do stuff like that, which is crazy. What were your thoughts whenever let's start with the book. Like what were some of the things that were you aware of that?
No. Oh, gosh, there's so many things. I did not know it was this popular. Definitely did not know. I had kind of I had seen images of women of that time on a bike, but I didn't know their story at all. Yeah. So it was really cool hearing about those stories, and I think those are always my favorite stories to hear. Are just the people that we get to hear about in history are generally men. And we always see men as the pioneers of whatever, whether it be, hiking mountains or bike racing. We get to hear that story. And I'm pretty certain that there's always the female equivalent to it. We just don't get to hear their story about it.
Yeah.
So it was really cool to be like, oh wow, there is this rich history of this, and especially in cycling, like I wouldn't have known. And I think one of the crazy but amazing things, and it's so telling, and I still feel like it's so telling in how women's experiences today, is that they ended up being stronger racers because everybody thought that they needed to go shorter. They needed a ride for shorter amount of time than the guys did. And so they ended up, shortening the track, and which made their races so much faster.
Yeah.
Which is so cool to think about. Like,
whenever you're talking about being a crit racer, that's what I started thinking about.
Oh, totally.
I mean, it's the same atmosphere. It's like you're right there. You're seeing the speed. You're in the action.
And I loved that. Record shows them as being competitive and aggressive.
Yeah.
And
the strategy, tons of strategy.
Yeah, that just, it's unfortunate because I still think people kind of assume that women aren't competitive and women don't like to get aggressive, and that's just not the case. And that's actually why I started a local women's team here in Austin, was that I just wanted to be like, you know what? I love competition, and I know that there's women that love competition, and like for the sake of competition, like I just think it is so fun to get out there and like give it your best mental and physical,
What's
shot.
the name of that team? Your team?
It's Ultraviolet.
Ultraviolet Racing.
Ultraviolet, yeah.
It's on Instagram.
Yeah, on Instagram. Follow us.
Yeah,
so it was cool to see that, because it's like, of course there's women that back then were super competitive and aggressive.
It's crazy because like that they were doing it because one, for the money, but also they really loved it. Like, it's not that there was this easy path into cycling where, oh, we're going to be professional cyclists and racers and women. It's like they like paved the way for that because I assume they wanted to. I mean, like, there was obviously a drive to do it,
Yeah.
So,
and they got paid.
Yeah, I know. They were.
That was
they
the
were
other
doing
surprising thing, is they were making money
more than the
racing.
men.
Yeah,
and it's kind of interesting. That's the one thing I want to talk about. Is like, it's almost like back in 1900, the women were more popular. The races were more well attended. They made more money than the men did. And it's kind of like gone backwards. Like, we've gone backwards since 1900.
Yeah.
So what does it look like now for? I mean, do you probably have a better sense of how is it different for you versus a man?
My perspective comes from kind of being U.S. based, and so I just want to note that. And the kind of the pro road peloton too is kind of where I'm coming from, and it's kind of bleak for everybody a little bit.
Yeah.
Going to be a professional athlete or professional road cyclist, there's not a lot of opportunity there. And when it comes to men, they have kind of a built-in progression. And so boys are told at a young age that they are competitive and that they can play sports and they can do it for a living even. They like hear that even from, being really young. And there's a lot more opportunities, I think, for young boys to get involved in cycling and be on that kind of path to becoming a pro.
More physical or athletic or whatever. Parents are just pushing it from a young age.
Yeah. And women in the pro peloton tend to actually enter it at a later age. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I would absolutely love to see more young women being told. I mean, and we are. I just think there's a big margin to grow that as well.
Do you see it like going at a good trend? Like,
No, yeah,
No.
that's the worst part is so just kind of what I like to compare is like, say a dude, my counterpart, starts racing, decides he's interested. He is probably doing training rides with mostly guys. And his first race is most likely going to be a Cat 5 race, all to themselves, all men. And as he progresses, he is going to be racing amongst his peers. And so, there's a Cat 4, a Cat 5, or like the beginner categories in racing. He's racing against those. And then, he's doing better. And so he moves up to like a Cat 3 category. And generally, you'll see men get to race a Cat 3 category by themselves. And then it's just that progression. And so, but as, a woman, and I say that is an inclusive term, you start riding, and you're probably riding with mostly guys. If you're lucky, there's definitely other women there, and more so you're seeing more women, but you're most likely probably around guys. And then you decide that you want to race, and you're lucky if there's a one race dedicated to only women. And there's a good chance that maybe that race is actually like an open field. And so you're racing with pros all the way down to beginners. Or you're in the categories with the men. So you're never really racing kind of that. You're never getting a feel for kind of your own category. You're kind of always lumped in because maybe there's just not as many of you.
You're like lumped in, but you're only competing against other women?
You're generally only competing against other women, but oftentimes it's like, it's like a chicken and the egg thing all the time. If there's only 4 women that show up to your race, it's not going to be super fun to race like a 40-mile road race with just 4 people. Right. And so like I get being in, lumping into the guys that maybe have 30 or something. So that makes sense. But it's just different. Like it's really, that trajectory of learning is so different. And that's not an easy solution. And people like to point fingers.
I'm not pointing fingers.
No. There's a lot of other people pointing a lot of other fingers as to why that is and how to solve it.
Well, one thing I think is valuable, or at least I hope is valuable, but with the podcast, it's intentional. I have 2 daughters, and I want them to be in a good, inclusive world, specifically in the cycling community where I spend a lot of my time. And I feel like just being able to hear about other women and hear the passion for cycling and for competing. I mean, I've had Lael Wilcox on, which is obviously like a huge superstar with more of like the bike packing type stuff, but
endurance stuff.
But I mean, there's a lot of, there's so many. I could do 50%, and actually that's one thing I want to do for 2020. I'm trying to do 50% women and 50% men. Like just because there's equally amount good stories, like
absolutely.
And it's like what you said, like for every story about a man who's done this, there's also a woman that's done that too. We just didn't hear that story.
And probably done it in like way more rough conditions with things against her. Man, there's so much here and it's so rich. For as bleak as some things are when it comes to supporting women in cycling, there's so much good stuff happening. It's amazing and it's crazy. And now I'm like, God, 10 years goes by so fast. Thinking about like 10 years ago to now, like, there's women doing like everything on bikes, and they're like present on Instagram and stuff, and it gets other women like excited about it, from mountain biking to like some of my favorite Instagram accounts are following women professional downhill racers, and like I just like watching them like wheelie and like doing cool shit, and like I cannot watch another mountain bike YouTube video of dudes anymore because there are women doing that now. And bike packers and endurance racers and then crit racers, and holy shit, like the American women that are at top of our peloton right now are actually doing well on the international stage. Ruth Winder just won the Tour Down Under in Australia and broke like a 7 or 11 year streak of an Australian team winning that race. Like that is incredible. And so it's like, whatever you're interested in bikes, like however you are interested in riding, there's women doing that right now, and they're doing it in a way that is so rad. And so like that is, that's my goal, as I'm inspired by other women's stories, and I want to put out those stories that I don't see, or that I only see, guys producing. And because I want to inspire like girls like your daughters to be like, yeah, oh, that's awesome, I can definitely do that. Yeah. And we're seeing more of that, and it's really, really cool. And it's opening up even just not only across genders, but culture, race, age. Like you see, I love seeing more age diversity in cycling.
I feel like cycling as a whole, well, you tell me, but I feel like cycling as a whole, well, I don't know about the roadie scene too much, I'm going to be honest.
That's okay.
I can't speak to that one, but the cycling community that I'm in seems very, maybe not very inclusive, but it seems like like you're saying, there's a lot of good.
It's cracking.
We're seeing a lot more examples. We can have podcasts, we can have social media, like we have YouTube, and like people, whoever you are, can put your story out there, and somebody else can latch onto it and be inspired by it.
Yeah.
I guess the question is, where do we improve? How can we improve? Do you? I mean, I know it's a complex question, but I'm a dumb guy. I like. Whenever you're talking about this stuff, I'm like, yeah, I had all these opportunities, and I don't know what it's like to show up to a group ride and be a minority, you know, and like, I might be the only one there. I've been on plenty of group rides where there was maybe a girl there, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so I don't know what it's like to be that girl, like where do we have to improve?
Yeah, that is a tough question, because there's so many things to do.
You can't solve the entire...
Yeah, I think it's like, kind of evaluating your own platform and deciding like, what can I do?
Yeah, that's a good
What
way to
is
put
my
it.
sphere of influence, and how can I make whatever kind of cycling that I'm doing more inclusive? And because that it's different for everybody. And I think that's actually really powerful to think about, is like, and it's funny, people want to like make a difference in the world, right? Like for a lot of us, like that's what we want to do. And I think sometimes it's easy to actually like look at things like Instagram and be like, oh, shit, I'm doing nothing. Like, and I have that feeling sometimes where I'm like, I should be doing so much more. And then I get a DM from somebody that says, hey, I just want to let you know you've inspired me to do, to sign up for a 65-mile ride. I know that's not that big of a distance for you, but this is really big for me.
Dude, I remember my first 65 miles.
Dude, I know, it's huge. 65 is huge.
It's a big deal.
But just to have this one person be like, you've inspired me to ride a bike. And I truly think that bikes can change people's lives, and bikes can inspire women in a way that I will never cease to be amazed by that. And to even have inspired one person, one woman, is like, it filled me up. I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to keep telling my story.
I know that feeling, man.
Even though,
that's
like,
a good feeling.
I don't know, my story is like kind of boring sometimes.
It's not, man. I don't know.
But
we all feel like that.
I know.
Right? We all feel like that. But
I actually, I got to talk to Rue, who is Lael's partner and takes photos of kind of the journey that she's done, that they're doing. And they have run into backlash, and like, they're just out there, they just want to ride bikes and have fun and share that story. And I made sure to tell Rue, I was like, I just want to let you know, like, your stuff is so inspiring to me, and it is so important for you to be telling these stories. And
I was there at the bikepacking summit with Lael and Rue.
Awesome.
And Rue gave a presentation, and it was the last night we were there, and she was I think she was the second to last presentation for the entire event. And when she got up there, the entire room was just like applauding, and like some people were standing, and it was just such a warm thank you to her, and like an appreciation for her. I got to I don't know if you heard that, but I interviewed both of them at the bikepacking summit.
Awesome. I'll have to go back and listen to it.
Got a chance to like publicly thank her, because I mean, I'm inspired by Lael's story.
Right, and it transcends just a story about women,
it can do
right?
more. It can do more than just it's a great story, and it needs to be told.
I am inspired by other women's stories, and so my goal is just to, inspire even just a handful to get out there and do their thing. Something that is a pretty common theme amongst people that ride bikes is a genuine enthusiasm for riding. And I think we take it for granted sometimes that we actually have like an interest in something that like keeps us going. And so many people are kind of lost out there.
Yeah.
And don't know what they're doing, and don't have a sense of self, and like don't have anything that they're really genuinely excited about. And I just think, gosh, like where would my life be if I didn't find that interest?
I know, man. Well, I talked about it a little bit on the last podcast, but I used cycling as a way to overcome like drug and alcohol abuse. For, like, I was like in jail and, the whole 9 yards, and like really just not, I was a shitty person, just like worthless, like a loser. That's a good, I was a loser. But I mean, I used cycling as a way to, it was my new drug. It was my new thing that I did. And it was a healthy thing that I could like gravitate to, and it just took over, man. And the community, like you say, it's weird how we all get here, but like once we're here, it's a great community.
Totally. And I think maybe this hasn't been super intentional. It's just been like who I am. But it's kind of funny that there's, a little bit of like kind of clicks in the bike world of like, if you just mountain bike, you're like, what are these road people? And like vice versa. And, or you're a racer, racing, like whatever. I just ride my bike to work. Fuck cars. Like, fuck you. Like, it's kind of funny that like there's camps, right? And, I love riding my bike in all the different ways. And like, it has been fun to try to like break those camps up.
Yeah.
And like it's just I think it's really funny because I have been road racing focused for the past 2 years, and so people kind of like assume that's how I ride my bike. And I'm like, no, I like all of it. Like, I like to commute. I like to go bike camping. I like to ride my mountain bike for fun. Like, I love to race, and I like to race cyclocross, and I like to race road bikes. And it's been kind of fun to start cracking those barriers now, and seeing people start to be like, oh, maybe I should like try a mountain bike.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you should. Trails are awesome.
That's the perfect way to look at it. Instead of like just getting in your camp, cycling has so much to offer. And I don't do much road because of cars and stuff. That's not really my thing. But like,
yeah, totally.
I do. I mean, I love all forms of cycling. Even a unicycle. Like maybe one day I'll try a unicycle.
Well, and the also beautiful thing is biking can kind of change with your life as you go through life. And, sometimes like right now, like I have the ability to race, but I am not going to be one of those people that race till I'm like 80.
Yeah.
No way. And like when I'm 80, like I really hope that I have like a tricycle on a bike path. Just
going to the grocery
around,
store, going
and
to the coffee shop.
I just think that's such a wonderful thing.
That's my
about riding.
We bought land in Northwest Arkansas where the
cool.
biking infrastructure, and that's where I plan on retiring because the biking infrastructure is there. Like I don't need a car, ride my bike to the market, ride to the coffee shop, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you talk a little bit about what you're doing in the Austin cycling community?
Cool.
And just talk about that a little bit. What are you doing?
Yeah, so I will say I moved to Austin about 5 years ago from Omaha. And so I had kind of a couple years starting to get into cycling and starting to get into racing. And I moved to Austin, and Austin is and has been, it's slightly changing, but it's very like race focused in the community, for better or for worse. And so I really dove into getting into racing, getting into cyclocross, and then eventually got into road and crit racing because there is a weekly race series here called the Driveway Series that runs from like March through September once a week. It is a party and it's racing. It's where the community goes. And so there's like, it fosters like a great racing community. And so I jumped into that, and I've just had a passion since started riding to get more women to ride. And then even more so to get women interested in racing because I love it so much. And I want to see more women out there.
Yeah, you want some friends.
Yeah, I do. And so I had kind of started organizing women's rides and actually did it at more of a beginner level when I started organizing.
Yeah.
And did it revolving around the Rafa Women's 100, which is a day that Rafa has set as like kind of a celebration of the women's community to do a 100K ride together. And I can't remember if I did it two or three times. The ride.
Yeah.
So
I thought I saw
usually...
you post something on Instagram where you're like, "This is the first time I haven't been able to go," or "Look at all these awesome women."
Probably.
Okay. You're like
it's
me.
A theme. Like
yeah.
I just, it happens all the time now, which is awesome. So really started to just try to organize. I was doing training rides leading up to this bigger ride. And so what my idea was to get women that are interested in doing a ride like that. 100K is like 62 miles or something like that. So a big ride for somebody that isn't doing big rides.
No, that's a solid ride.
And unfortunately for Austin, that was usually set in the summer, like July, I think. And so it's like horribly hot for somebody that's not used to riding. But did a bunch of training rides that started out, I think, maybe 15 miles and then worked up to that distance. And I did that over a couple years. I think I did it 3 times. And it was, I'm still kind of shocked by what happens when you introduce women to other women and put them on bikes. And so many wonderful connections happen from those rides. Like now there's like team clubs that are women's focused, like Team Snacks is just like a fun way to get women into riding. And it's a club. Absolutely. Everybody wants to be on Team Snacks. And like that kind of came out of those rides, and like it introduced more women into racing, and it like helped that. And I just saw the impact that those kinds of things have.
Yeah.
And I, being competitive and being like, I don't want to be a part of the boys racing club. I want to start a girls racing club. Decided I really wanted to start my own women's team here, and linked up with Machines for Freedom, which is a women's cycling apparel brand based out of LA. I hit up the owner, and I did not expect her to say yes, but was like, hey, So I have this team, and I would like you to be the sponsor. Because I was like, there's nothing better than like this rad women's brand that is focused on showing women as athletic and competitive and, just imagery that you don't see of women on bikes to align with. And she was like, yeah, I think that's cool. And I was like, oh shit, I think I have to do this team now.
So you didn't have anyone on the team yet?
No, I didn't even. It was like kind of still like a pipe dream, but that made it solidified. And the idea behind that team was I just wanted to show that there are women out there that are competitive and that want to ride hard and race hard and be competitive and like understand strategy and at the end of the day like crack open a beer and maybe go to the strip club like like that is like that's really like behind what ultraviolet
I'm picturing
is.
all of y'all rolling up to a strip club.
Oh,
on your
it's
bikes.
happened many times. On the bikes it hasn't happened yet.
Let's make that happen.
But it's just again, it's like that was the story that I wanted to tell that I didn't quite see out there yet.
That's good.
And so it was like balancing this idea.
It takes people like you. It's like, okay, this is missing.
Yeah.
We need this, so I guess I'll just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was by far like one of the best decisions I've ever made. I've absolutely loved, organizing this team. And
how many people are on it now?
We now have 7, which is huge to me. It started out with 3, including myself. So I had like 2 other teammates and myself. And
so what do y'all do? Do y'all like enter certain events together and like what does it mean to be on ultraviolet racing?
Yeah. So the initial idea was kind of goes back to what I was talking about with the trajectory of how you enter women's racing. And it's a struggle for a lot of women that want to kind of race at an elite level, race at a hard level, to bridge the gap between being a beginner to being an elite racer. Because you kind of get in the middle category and all of a sudden you're racing with the top elite level. So when you're a Cat 3, you're generally racing with like pro or Cat 1s. So it's hard. It's like really tough. And also what I was saying is like there's not as many women that show up to racing, and more so I think it's challenging. Women drop off from racing too. Granted, I think men also drop off from racing. You just don't notice it as much because there's not as many, or there's more. Yeah. Whereas if it's a small community of women racers, when one racer decides to not race anymore, it's like kind of impactful. So anyway, I really wanted to build up that middle for women. I wanted to build up the Cat 3 and the Cat 2 racers. And so that's kind of what Ultraviolet was about. So now we have, and bring in kind of those competitive Cat 4, Cat 5 beginner racers that are like, I really like this. I want to do it more. And like, I want to learn how to do this. Yeah. Kind of bring those up into the ranks. And so that's what we have now is I've mostly Cat 2s, a Cat 3 and a Cat 4 racer on the team.
So is that your initiative? Are you looking to grow it and
to grow the team?
Yeah. Yeah, no. Right now, I mean, do you want to put a pitch out there for more women to hit you up, or what do you
No, actually, what makes women's racing so exciting is having people to compete against. And it is it takes a lot of time to run a team. And like I do like bare bones, I feel like. Yeah. In terms of team organization, I make sure there's a kit and I make sure registrations are paid, and then answer questions. And that's a lot of time. Like it takes a lot of time and effort. I think my what I would suggest
So you want some competition.
Yes, what I would suggest to women out there that like want a team like Ultraviolet is create it.
Yeah.
Like, even if it maybe is just you. Like I said, I thought it was funny. We started out as a team of 3, and I felt like I was begging women to like be on the team for like 2 years, 3 years. And this year, it was the first year that I was like, oh shit, I have to turn people down. And I feel bad because I just can't organize that many people.
Yeah.
And I absolutely would like, it's so much more fun to have competition out there. You learn so much more. And it doesn't mean that you can't be friends either. And that has been one of the coolest things, I think, in the Austin community. It is race focused. And when I came here 5 years ago, I just kind of laughed at it because I was like, wow, everybody only rides with their teammates. There's like no crossover. And I was like, I'm not for this. And I like a lot of people, and I'm going to start organizing rides that invite more people. And it's kind of funny. It's definitely more integrated now. And which is really helpful because, like I said, it's so race focused here. So the competition gets the best of everybody sometimes. And to have that amongst women in a way that hinders friendships is terrible. Like, that's the worst thing that could happen to a women's community that's already just like struggling. Now it's like everybody is so supportive of each other, and it's awesome. Like, everybody shows up to other people's team rides and stuff, and it makes racing so much fun too, to have your pals that you love, but like on the during the race you're like, I will destroy you.
And then we'll get a beer later.
And then we're going to get a beer later and laugh
club.
about it. And yeah, exactly. So yeah, and like I said, I'm a big proponent of fake it till you make it. I think everybody's pretty much faking it until they make it. And so
that's the way it works. Yeah.
If you want to start a team, man, just do it.
Yeah.
Like, just
if you want to
make
start a
name.
podcast, just do it.
I know, exactly, right?
It's not like, there's no one stopping you, man. You can just go and do it,
Yeah.
I love your enthusiasm. I love your enthusiasm for cycling, for racing, and for being a champion for women and creating a space to help bridge that gap, and Dottie Farnsworth and Tilly Anderson started it 120 years ago.
Yeah.
But we need women to be out there still championing that cause. So it's like you said, you can only do what you can do. So we should all focus on that.
Yeah.
But I know you got to go. So
oh, damn. Oh yeah, you're right. It was. Yeah.
It's time. But
I have some tattoos.
Me too.
I do love tattoos.
Yes.
I have been very hesitant to get like a bike related tattoo. I don't know why. I think maybe it's just because I think it's cliche, but it's really not. Is it Dottie?
Dottie.
Yeah, your Dottie tattoo is amazing. That definitely made me think like, maybe I need to get like a super rad female cyclist.
You should. I know, man. There's like so much cool tattoo artwork possibilities there.
Especially in Austin. There's amazing artists here.
Yeah. I'm so lucky that I'm related to her.
It's such a that's so cool.
I feel like I can tattoo her on my leg,
Totally. I think it's really rad.
But yeah, like if you like got in, you should read Women on the Move. Have you read it yet?
No, but it's definitely on my list now.
I can promise you are gonna fucking love it. And you'll pick a favorite and then research her some more, and maybe she'll be your tattoo, whoever it is.
There's also a book that I was kind of thinking about that book reminded me of, and I think it's called Wheels of Change.
Yes.
And it kind of details more like how the bicycle kind of propelled the women's movement.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting too.
I haven't read that one yet, but
it's really short, and it's kind of like almost like a picture book you could look through.
Cool. I'll read it too. I promise. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. If people want to follow you on the socials, how can they find you?
Sure. You can find me at Jolene Holland. That's my own personal one. And the Ultraviolet Racing account, I highly suggest as well. And you can kind of stay up with us at Ultraviolet Racing. And I also love to hear everybody else's stories and what inspires you. And I love that too. So
Awesome.
give me a holler.
I have a lot more coming on this podcast, and obviously you can reach out to Jolene as well. I wish you well in your recovery.
Thank
and
you.
I hope to see you back racing and champion women's causes in the cycling industry very, very soon.
Thank you, Patrick.
All right. Have a good one.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And thanks again to Jolene for coming on the show. Truly appreciated her perspectives and just being willing to share. Maybe you've noticed that the first 3 episodes have been either women interviews or based on women's stories. And next week's episode is going to be no exception. You might have heard of Katie Visco and her husband, Henley Phillips. They recently completed the first ever human-powered traverse across Australia. She ran while Henley supported her via bicycle, 100% human-powered, and it's an amazing story. I intentionally wanted to start off this year by having the topic and the focus be about women in cycling. As I've mentioned in the show and a couple other times, I have 2 daughters, I have a wife, and I'm surrounded by women. Even my dog is a girl. So there's a personal interest of mine to learn about women's perspectives in cycling, and at the same time I realize that could benefit my daughters and maybe other women out there as well. So I hope you've been enjoying these first few episodes of the year, and I hope you'll enjoy next week's as well. Many, many more coming. So thank you for tuning in. I just want to say one thing. Bikes are fun. Go ride your damn bike.
You load up your bike, you ride away from home. You could be with your friends or you could be alone. You ride for a day or maybe more. You just love being in the great outdoors. Everything you need is strapped to your bars, including that new pillow you got from Santa Claus. And then you think, oh shit, to yourself. You left that super lightweight tent on the living room shelf. Bikes.